All right. Let's see if, there we go. Microphone's working? No? Yes. There it is. All right, good. Yeah, if at any point in time there are technical difficulties like that, wave, because I may not know. And I hate when people say, oh, we couldn't hear you, or it was echoing, or you should have moved the mic, or.
When I click on you for the slides, I get somebody's big metrics.
Okay, that one I have no idea. You're gonna have to ask Chris about that one. Mark just asked when he clicks on me for the slides, he gets somebody else's slides, but we'll figure that one out after, I promise. I gotta climb up here. The worst part about this is the squirming when Chris is talking and introducing. So you're like, but it does make sense to be up higher. Like Chris said, there's still some seats over there if people don't want to stand, so you can do that. It seems, well, I guess this is like, might be year 30, I'm not even sure, but close to it anyway. I always am thinking, what am I going to talk about? And I always kind of come back to this topic because I think, how many of you would classify yourselves as a personal trainer? Just raise your hand. Interesting. So, physical therapists? A few. Strength and conditioning coaches? More. Okay, interesting. Because usually it runs higher towards the personal trainer number. But either way, we're going to talk about program design. The reality is, if you're a strength coach or a physical therapist or a personal trainer, it doesn't make any difference. The way we design programs is always the same anyway. But I think sometimes you got to put something in the title to hook somebody, to get some audience to come in here. But it's really not going to change, and that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to say new book, but it's not a new book. If you bought Designing Strength Training Programs and Facilities, the new updated edition, this is pretty much the same book. I like to be clear about it because Human Kinetics bought this book and they didn't like the cover and they didn't like the title. So they said, will you update it, which I did just a little bit. And then they put a new cover on it and a new title on it. So as much as I would love for you to buy my books, if you bought Designing Strength Training Programs and Facilities in the last 3 years, don't buy this book. Sorry. If you didn't, then you should buy this book. But, right, your sport's not different, you just think it is. This is one of my favorite quotes. When Art Horn and those guys used to do their Boston Sports Medicine Group, BSMPG thing at Northeastern, they brought Marco Cardinale over. Marco Cardinale is a really interesting guy because he is an Italian guy who speaks English with a British accent, which I think is fascinating. And he ran the British Olympic effort in 2012. And when he started talking over there, he said his biggest stumbling block was talking to coaches because everybody was like, well, but I work with this sport and it's different. And he was like, strength and conditioning wise, it's really not different. Your sport's not different, you just think it is. So that leads us here, right? Your client's not different, they just think they are. Because we get this, right? Does your program work for you? What about aging low T males? Yep. How about perimenopausal women? Yep. How about menopausal women? Yep. How about younger ex-athletes? Yep. Doesn't make any difference. There's nothing, and it's really interesting because I've been looking kind of into because all of a sudden perimenopause, menopause, that's really big. But everything that you read, it's like strength and conditioning. You've got to get stronger. You've got to get your VO2 max up. Everybody that's on this thing, strength and conditioning. We just have to figure out how to do strength and conditioning, how we scale it, how we progress it, how we regress it for all of these groups. But what we're going to do and what we're going to do in the practical, it doesn't change, right? Because it's all 80-20, 90-10. I think 90-10, but maybe 80-20. 80% of everything that we do is going to be the same. I don't care who it is. I don't care if you play lacrosse. I don't care if you play ice hockey. I don't care if you play in the NFL. 80% of what we do is going to be the same. I might even go to 90. So if you came to our facility and you watched our adult groups, one of the things people will always say is, wow, the adults train just like the athletes. Pretty much they do. There's a little bit of a difference. We don't Olympic lift with our adults. That's maybe what falls into the 10%. The plyos might be scaled back a little bit. That falls into the 10%. But the 80, 90%, and that's what we're going to talk about more here is the 80, 90%. What's the same over and over again? Right? Courtney gets credit for this picture. I love it when somebody says, I'm an out-of-the-box thinker. I'm like, I think you should get your ass into the box. Right? Hence the picture of me with my ass in the box. See, Mark, that's why I said first 20 minutes, Mark, is better than the last 20 minutes. But, we might think outside the box, we might look outside the box, but we're always looking for stuff to put in our box. I want to be the master of the box. Whenever anybody says, I'm an out of the box kind of guy, I'm like, ugh, that's probably not good. You're probably doing a lot of dumb shit and getting people hurt. So, which is what we don't want to have happen, right? But with that said, we're always trying to make our program better. It's never ending, this process of listening to people, watching videos, trying to figure out, is there something there? Jess and I will exchange videos on Instagram all the time and say, what do you think? Is this an exercise? An exercise, not an exercise, but an exercise variation that we think might play with our audience, right? Because change is good. This is my favorite book probably of, I'd say, the last 5 years, Think Again by Adam Grant. If you haven't read Think Again by Adam Grant, I would strongly recommend that you get Think Again by Adam Grant. And Think Again is literally about what the title says. Thinking again. And if you say, what is thinking again? It's learning, right? Because for me, I'm famous for changing my mind. And some people will say, oh, you're so wishy-washy. Or, oh, 1 year you're doing this, and the next year you're doing this. And I'm like, yes, that is called learning. Okay? And I am never going to be defensive about learning. I'm never going to look at this and say, oh, yeah, you guys should just stay stupid. Like maybe read one book and then just stop, right? No. You should be trying all the time to figure out, is there a better way? But you also shouldn't, when you leave here today, if you leave here today and abandon your programming and all of a sudden everything is water bags, then we've failed, right? If you find a new tool here that makes you scrap what you're doing, then we've failed. But if we get you to think, and I always talk about thinking, the most important part about thinking, and I don't even know if that slides in. I'm going to see what's next. Oh, well, I love this quote. Sorry. Mark Verstegen was at this seminar one time, and he started his seminar that way. He said, if you think you know it all, can you hang around after, because I got some questions. I'm right with Mark. If you think you know it all, if you're smarter than me and you got it all figured out, stay. Come to the Q&A with me, like we gotta have a little table, and I'll ask you questions. You can just say to me, I got this whole thing figured out, and I'll lay it all out for you. I don't think that person is here, but I hope they are, right? Because it ain't what you don't know that gets you in trouble, it's what you think you know that ain't true. The legendary Mark Twain, right? It's what you think you know that ain't true. We got a lot of what you think you know that ain't true in our field. So we're going to talk about that too. But most important thing, and you're all doing it here now, cheating. I am a massive advocate of cheating. It's the worst thing they say to you in school is don't cheat. I always say, if I start Mike Boyle University, class 1, cheating. Because everything gets easier after that. If I just said to you, okay, first day of school, find the smartest kid in your dorm, and I'm just going to let you copy all his work the whole rest of the year, and you can turn it all in, and I'm not going to be mad at you at all. You'd get all A's, right? You'd graduate, whatever, magna cum laude from whatever school that you're at. That's what happens when you get out of school. They literally say, yeah, we told you all it's like cheating, do your own work, all that stuff. That's all bullshit. Now we want you to basically find people smarter than you and steal their stuff and try to repackage it as your own. Because that's really what you're doing. What we're doing is probably, again, 80-20. Maybe 20% is original thought. Probably 80% is somebody else's thoughts that we've incorporated as our own. And that's really what we got to be doing here, right? The important thing to understand is, and this is what we talk about, like what you think you know that's not true. Why do you believe? And I think this is super interesting because Dina Nayeri is actually an author. I believe that she is an Iranian immigrant who actually ended up doing a really good TED Talk on belief. And I'm listening to her TED Talk about belief. Why do you believe? And all I'm doing is writing down strength and conditioning notes about this. Because I'm thinking to myself, she's exactly right, and it's exactly the same. Because when you think about it, right, why do you believe? Number one, your senses. How often have you said, it feels good. I feel right. I always go to the foam rolling thing. Does foam rolling work? The fact that they've sold like $1 billion worth of foam rollers probably tells you foam rolling works. The fact that people get on a foam roller and they're like, hey, I feel better. Foam rolling works. Well, you can argue the research bullshit with me for as long as you want. I don't really care. I know that people foam roll and then say, how do I get one of these? I listen to people who are good at what they do, And they hopefully share their experience with you. Hey, this is what we do, this is why we do it, right? And then the last thing, but not the first thing, data, the research. Unfortunately, now we're in a big data era right now, where everybody's already, do you have a research study on that? But I look at it and think, if I sense it, if I feel it in my gut and a bunch of experts tell me it's a good idea, I'm not gonna be that worried that there isn't a research study yet on whatever it is that we're talking about. Because I feel like those other 3 layers of belief for me are gonna be enough for me to go forward. Alan Cosgrove, I don't know if Alan's here yet, but Alan likes to say research is sports history. Researchers look at what we're doing and then they go back and study, hey, why is that working? There's lots of research now coming out on unilateral training. We've been doing unilateral training for a really long time, but people keep looking at it and saying, hey, why is this working? They go out and they do the research study. So you just got to make sure you don't get your cart in front of your horse, right? So when we talk about program design for personal training, in this particular setting right now, we're going to talk about primarily about adult clients. An adult client. People always ask me, well, how do you define adult in your business? A person with a job whose livelihood would be affected by injury. That's how I define an adult client. And I think that's really important. Because it's the person who comes to your business who, if they got hurt doing something stupid that you told them to do, that they couldn't go to work, that their ability to earn a living would be compromised. That's an adult client, right? Adults aren't athletes. They may think they're athletes. They may want to train like athletes. They may want to act like athletes. But if they got a job that they got to go to and they're not getting paid for whatever it was, like if they don't get paid to play lacrosse, or they don't get paid to play football, they don't get paid to play basketball, I'm looking at it, they're not athletes. And again, am I going to burst their little balloon and tell them that? No, am I going to say you're not an athlete? But in my mind, I know I have to train this person as someone who is going to work after they get done with me. Or as someone who is coming to see me after they get done with work. Adults have jobs, right? I love this. The leading cause of injury in old men is them thinking they are still young men, right? We got to prevent old man injuries. The good or the bad, most of the dinks that we run into are men, just in our field anyway. Women will not tend to be as stupid and as ego-driven as men. Just, you're laughing, but you're like, it's true, right? It's absolutely true. I'm a man, I get it. But I've gotten to the point where I've totally put my ego aside. I just realized I'm an old man and that old men shouldn't do certain things, like lots of them, right? Achilles tears, rotator cuff. We got to prevent that stuff, and to do that, we got to do the small stuff. We've got to do all the rolling and all the stretching and all the warm-up, because we've got these old, I always say life is this gradual transition from filet mignon to beef jerky. I am firmly in the beef jerky stage of life, right? Think like, right, you look at beef jerky and you say, that was once probably really good quality meat. Now it's really hard and brittle, salty, cracks easily, right? But that's what's happening. And this is a total aside, sorry. But I was kind of arguing with someone on the internet the other day. I will just tell you this. Please do not tell people about getting old if you are not old. Because whenever people say, oh, age is just a number, I'm like, bullshit. Age is a reality, right? Just so we know, every one of us is going to die. Everyone in this room is going to die. Maybe not this week. Maybe not in the next 30 years, but everyone is going to die. Aging is an inevitable reality. And we've got to figure out how we battle that aging process in an intelligent way. That's the key, right? An intelligent way. P.S. I thought that might get a laugh. No one thinks they're an athlete more than the recreational pickleball player, right? They spend huge amounts of money on gear. They are the least fit, generally speaking, of anyone who has attempted sports in the last 40 years, right? But all of a sudden they're looking at you and thinking, I gotta work on my agility, and you're like, slow your roll there, buddy. This is, it's dangerous enough just you playing, much less training. But two big things to think about. This has nothing to do with pickleball, right? Strength, conditioning. That's what we kept talking about. Strength and conditioning. This thing boils down to strength and conditioning. It does not, I was just talking to Don Saladino about this. Grip strength is a great proxy for strength. But let's all understand, it is a great proxy for strength. When people say that grip strength is a good proxy for strength, it means that people who do lots of grippy shit will be good with a hand gripper. It does not mean go buy hand grippers. Like when people say grip strength relates to longevity, and someone's like, oh yeah, I ordered grippers on Amazon. Like, no, that is not how this works. But we have people out there that are literally doing, oh yeah, I'm doing a lot of grip work. You're not gonna live longer if you do a lot of grip work. You're gonna live longer if you do a lot of strength work, which results in you having a better grip. It is very much a cart and horse scenario. In the same way that VO2 max is, right? The higher your VO2 max is, the longer that you're gonna live. So suddenly someone's like, yeah, I gotta do, I'm doing 12 hours of zone 2 cardio a week. I'm like, that's probably not it either. One of the things, and I was lucky enough, I did the Peter Attia podcast like a month ago, and we talked about this. And you just have to realize that the average person, the person that we are dealing with, probably is exercising 2 to 3 hours a week. Not 2 to 3 hours a day, but 2 to 3 hours a week. And our clients, we're trying to get our clients to upgrade from 2 hours a week to 3 hours a week. So when people start talking about, oh yeah, you need 6 hours of zone 2 a week, it's like you need to stop everything that you're doing and just whatever, get on a bike or go run or do whatever it is. It doesn't make any sense, and we have to be more, I guess, more practical, more realistic when we look at this stuff and realize for us, if we can get people to do 3 strength training workouts a week, 3 total body strength training workouts a week, and 3 interval training workouts a week, we're gonna make a massive impact in their strength and in their conditioning, and we are gonna improve their grip strength, and we are gonna raise their VO2 max. But we've got to keep the cart firmly in front of the horse, right? So the big thing here, like, don't chase the test results. Don't have the hand grippers out and let people constantly test their grip strength. It's not relevant. Goodhart's law. When the test becomes the goal, it ceases to be a good test. That's the thing that you have to think about. When the test becomes the goal, it ceases to be a good test. So yes, if you bring somebody in and they have really bad hand grip strength, they really need to get stronger, yes. Do you do a grip program with them? No. If you bring somebody in, and you can't, like, we don't even try to VO2 test we're just trying to get our clients to do some sort of interval training. I wouldn't dare VO2 test. I mean, if we had a cardio lab with a crash cart and I could, be able to resuscitate people, I might think about that, but in our situation, we want to give them a really, really good, simple introduction to interval training. That's what we're really looking for. If we could, if you want, and we're going to do this, actually, Kevin's going to do it in his talk. We're going to do it a little bit in the practical. If you do want to know how fit you are, 2 Mile Assault Bike will tell you. What? Somebody just laughing, right? It'll tell you. And it's what they would call a maximum aerobic speed test. So when you're done, and if you go to the practical, you'll see it. We'll let as many people who want to volunteer to do it. And when you're done, you'll get a maximum aerobic speed. It will be your average RPMs for that ride is your maximum aerobic speed. It's basically the speed that you can maintain for 5 to 6 minutes. Again, really good proxy for VO2, really, really easy way to find that VO2 max number. It's really hard to cheat. The only way you can cheat is if you lie. You've just stopped the thing and said, yeah, right, because we're gonna look at it and it's gonna say 2 miles and it's gonna say a time. So if you hit the stop button at the right time, it's pretty difficult to cheat on this thing. So what are we doing? Job 1, feel better, not worse. I don't understand why we need to say this. But in the era, we're coming out of the CrossFit era, right? We're coming out, there's a lot of people from a training perspective who don't get the feel better, not worse. With my clients, whenever I talk to a client, what I want to know is, how do you feel when you get up in the morning, and is that changing? When you get up in the morning, do you feel like, okay, I don't, like for me, I get up in the morning, I walk around like this for about a minute, and then the beef jerky starts to get a little fluid in it, and I'm like, okay, I feel better. But I can literally say, like, if I get up, does my back hurt? Does my shoulder hurt? What hurts? What doesn't hurt? I want people feeling better, not worse. If I get people who say, I'm coming 3 days a week, and man, I can barely move in the morning. It takes me 15 minutes to get going. I got to go in and put my back in a hot shower. I'm thinking, we are not doing our job. We're doing a bad job training you, because my initial goal for you is just this idea: feel better, not worse. So what I'm going to find out, if you come to me, the first thing I want to know is what hurts. What ails you when you get up in the morning? What is it? Do you get up in the morning and say, my shoulder is stiff, my back is stiff, my neck is stiff? I want to know what it is, and then we're going to aim to fix that. That's where we're going. Because I'll tell you something, from a training standpoint, word of mouth is your strongest advertising. And if people come in, or if people tell their friends, I've been going to Mike Boyle's and I feel way better, that friend wants to come in. That's why I always used to think about, like, I could never figure out the CrossFit thing, because somebody would be like, yeah, I did whatever workout today, and I vomited on myself, and then I laid on the floor for 20 minutes, and your friends are looking at you, and you're like, do you want to come? And they're kind of like, maybe not. No, that didn't have the vomiting on myself on the bingo card this month, so I'll probably skip out on that one, right? So why do we do it like this, right? I think most controversy comes from bad info, poor research, fake experts, or old writing. The biggest thing now, fake experts. It is so easy to be a fake expert right now with Instagram. It's amazingly simple. I mean, when I look at some of the people, and I always say, one of these years I am going to come as the real doddering old man, and I'm just going to out all the fake experts. I'm just going to be like, this is my Perform Better swan song, and I'm just going to talk shit about everybody and just not care. I'll be like, okay, I'm not coming back. But there are so many phonies out there. And number one rule for a phony, they're always in video. Okay? One of the things you'll notice with us, we always have client videos. You know why? Because we have clients. Right? If someone never has client videos, that should be a really big hint. Maybe they don't have any clients. If they're always in their garage doing stuff, talking about what they're doing, that might be a fake expert. I could go on all day about fake experts, but I won't. But fake experts, right? What we do, we are going to talk about practical, time-conscious ideas. We are going to talk about shit you can do in an hour with anybody. That's what matters. Because when we think about your business, our business, that's what it's built around. What can I do in an hour? What can I maybe do in an hour and 15 minutes with these people that makes sense, right? We're going to ignore theory if it's impractical. That might be the zone 2 thing, right? There may be some evidence, although I just listened to a podcast yesterday saying, again, depending on who you want to listen to, some people are going to say, just work harder. I like actually, Gabrielle Lyons has a really good thing. She says, aim for 75 hard minutes a week. That's kind of what I do. 75 hard minutes a week from a cardiovascular standpoint is a pretty reasonable goal versus, 150 minutes or 3 hours of, low intensity, whatever. 75 hard minutes is a pretty good guideline, right? Remember this. Living proof. Any idiot can and will write books, right? Books are out of date the moment you get them. It takes 2 or 3 years for a book to get from somebody writing it to somebody reading it, generally speaking, unless it's an ebook. So even the fact that, hey, this guy wrote a book may not be all that great an indicator. I always wonder why. Oh, I know why this does this. So now we're going to talk nuts and bolts program design. Really simple. Who are you working with? Are they adults? Are they athletes? Are they 70 years old? Are they 20 years old? We got to know who, right? And this is basics. What? What do they want to do? And then more importantly, what should they be doing? Because what they want to do may not be what they should be doing. I spend a lot of time trying to talk people out of what they want to do. and tell them that may not be a really good idea for you. Where? Where are we going to do it? Consider the facility. Like, what can I do based on where I am? Because having a really good idea about what you want to do and then realizing I can't do it where I am is, again, not a great way to run a business, not a great way to make money. When? 2 days, 3 days. So this is my big sort of social media soapbox now, right? Every day is a total body workout. Nobody, again, I always say, just so you know, if you're here, if you're doing body part workouts, consider yourself, prepare yourself to be insulted, because I'm going to tell you that you're not very smart, okay? I have no idea, whenever somebody says to me, oh, I'm going to go, it's back day. I'm like, seriously? What year is this, right? It's like Arnold and Franco Columbo, 1970, when I was in high school, hitting a big back day. But that's getting bigger and bigger, again, because of these pseudo steroid idiot Instagram guys, posting this stuff. People think that's the way you're supposed to train. Total body training just makes more sense because these people are going to come 2 to 3 times a week if you're lucky, which means if you can get them to work each pattern, I won't say muscle group, but each pattern 2 to 3 times a week, you're doing a really good job, right? And then how? We're going the rest of this, the remaining whatever we got left is going to be really more about how. Or actually, that's not true. I lied. But why? Make sure that the why and the training match up. This is really important, right? Don't train to your bias. This is a huge problem in our field, in personal training, in strength and conditioning, in whatever it is, where basically everybody that you train does your workout. If you're a kettlebell guy, they're kettlebell people. If you're a powerlifting guy, they're powerlifting people. If you're an Olympic lifting person, they're Olympic lifting people. That's what we don't want to have happen. It doesn't matter. You may all have a particular style of training that you're enamored with. That should have nothing to do with the people that you train. You train to their needs, not to your needs. So to be successful, we talk about the idea of sticking to the recipe. And I always say the recipe, if there's 2 things, when someone say, explain Mike Boyle's strength and conditioning in two words, actually 3 words, safe and smart. The training is safe, the training is smart. You're not going to get hurt. It's going to be well thought out. We're going to have a really good why for everything that's in that program. We do that in as Chris was saying, our certified functional strength coach course, we do it in our facility, right? We're going to talk in running time, so we're going to talk you through basically an hour workout. So when you're looking at the times that are up there, think about it as running time, and I say that it's not how long we're spending on each segment as much as it is that running 60-minute clock, right? So step 1 all the time, roll, stretch, dynamic warm-up. You can call dynamic warm-up whatever you want. You can call it mobility. You can call it activation. You can call it core training. That's what I said in my news. I don't care what you call it. I do care that you do it. Because when I look at this, I think the best warm-up exercises probably check all 3 boxes. They're probably a mobility exercise that activates some muscles and that probably has some core carryover for it. That's probably a really good part of the warm-up. So we've got to be able to put all that stuff together, right? So first thing we want to do is restore tissue quality and joint mobility. Roller rollers. If you haven't been on a roller roller, get a roller roller. I'm sure there's some floating around in here. I don't get any money from roller rollers. I just think they're better. Probably 5 years ago here, the guy from Rolga kind of cornered me, and he was like, "You have 5 minutes?" And I was like, "Not really." And then I was like, and then I looked in his hand, and I was like, "Do I have 5 minutes for another bumpy roller guy?" And I was like, "Not really." And but I'm polite. And I said, "Sure, I have 5 minutes." And I got down on the floor with this roller, and I got up from the floor and I looked at the guy and I was like, "You suck." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, I gotta replace all my rollers because this is way better. It really was, it's substantially better. Your ability to fall into these little depressions changes the foam rolling experience. It is just way better than a cylindrical roller. It's way better than any bumpy roller that I've ever seen. I won't belabor the point, but don't skip the step. Hip rotators, glutes, adductors, lats, posterior cuff, T-spine. Go to the areas, again, the areas that tend to feel sore. Go to those areas, work on them. It is not complicated, right? Then we're going to static stretch. And yes, static stretch. Static stretching has gone out of style. I don't know why. I do know why, actually. I always say I don't know why, but I do. There was a research study maybe 20 years ago that showed that static stretching resulted in decreases in power. As a result of that, many people, me included, stopped static stretching. We went all in favor of dynamic warm-up, dynamic flexibility. The problem with that research is it's not really compelling when you look at the research, because what I did after having a bunch of people get stiff, get hurt, go to physical therapy, get told they need to stretch, I came back to the conclusion that we should still be stretching. That also led me to go look at that static stretching research, and that's why I'm going to be, if you're going to be a quote the research person, read the research. And I mean read it. Because when you look at the anti-static stretching research, it was vertical jump, boom. 8 minutes of static stretching. Walk back over, do another vertical jump. I've said this a million times, but if I said to everybody in here, what do you think would happen? If I said, I'm going to test your vertical jump, I'm going to have you static stretch for 8 minutes, and then I'm going to have you go back and jump again. Everybody in here would say, your jump will probably go down a little. Guess what the research study showed? Your jump went down a little. Your jump went down about 5%. The problem is no one till later on did the next study and said, well, what if I did a little dynamic warm-up and I jumped around and I moved around and then I went back and jumped again? You know what happened? It came right back. What you saw was what would be considered a transient loss in power. But we reacted because, again, we were strength coaches, really, right? That's really what mattered to us. And we said, I can't have anybody be less explosive than they were before. So we didn't really look at the research. So my point is we static stretch all the time. John Davies, so I think John Davies was a kettlebell guy. I'm not really sure, but I just remember reading this quote, most people could use a good dose of static stretching. I 100% believe that. And again, we see that with our adult clients. Most of our adult clients, it's amazing how stiff they are. It's amazing how badly they move. Because most of them have probably not stretched since their last high school gym class. And if we think, what happens, right? What's aging? Right? Aging's a loss of extension. Aging is, if we think about the Thomas Myers stuff, aging is shortening on the front side, lengthening on the back side, what he called lock long and lock short. If we want to fight aging, what do I want to do? I want to keep working to try to be upright, right? I want my thoracic spine to be more mobile. I want my abdominal muscles to be longer. I want my hip flexors to be longer. I want my hamstrings. I want all this stuff to be at its normal resting length. That's all. If we can stay normal resting length the rest of our life, we're probably going to have pretty good posture into old age. It's the way that it works, right? And as I said, you can call stuff what you want, dynamic flexibility, movement prep. I don't care what you call it, but give me 5 minutes of static stretching before you do any of it. And guaranteed, you'll see it. It will be a game changer. And like we said, you're kind of trying to, if you think about it, I'm just trying to activate the backside and elongate the front side, you're probably on a pretty good track, to be perfectly honest. So step 5, step 2. How did 5 get there? But from 15 to 20 minutes. You know why I lumped all the other ones in 1 through 4. See, this is why the more you watch your own presentation, the more you don't watch your own presentation. But this is a really critical 5 minutes. So again, in this adult population, 5 minutes of power might be the most important thing that we do. It also might be the hardest thing that we're going to do. Because adults are losing power twice as fast as they're losing strength. So I think the stat was, if I lose 10% of my power, I lose 10% of my strength, I lose 17% of my power. You might think that's not a really big deal. If you double that, I've lost 20% and 34%. Okay? It's a really big difference. So we can maintain strength and not maintain power, but the loss of power is probably what gets us in old age. I can tell you, for me, I've lost legitimately 50% of my power. I used to be able to vertical jump 30 inches. I used to be able to get on the jump mat anytime I wanted to and jump in the 20s. And now I got to like warm up to be in the high teens. But I'm 65 years old. It's the reality of aging. We are going to lose that fast twitch explosive capability. We've got to figure out how to maintain that without hurting somebody, which is the key, right? So we keep coming back to this idea, and I'm going to say this over and over again. Be safe and be smart, right? Ladders. These guys are 70 years old in this video. They're both like 75 now. But for adults, this is power work. People might look at this and say, no, it's footwork, it's agility or whatever. Not at 70, it's not. If you watch your average, we have some 70-year-old clients who will come in, and ladder literally looks like this. And I'm not kidding. And I am fine with that. You know why? They're moving faster than they normally do. I am going to define power in the adult market as somebody moving faster than they normally would, which means this is power training, right? Low box jumps. Joe, unfortunately, has passed away. He finally succumbed to cancer. Joe was, I think, Kevin might know, he might have been 80, ex-firefighter in this video. But that's 9-inch box jumps, which is perfect for Joe. Because when we think about box jump and land from the same position. But that's explosive power development for somebody in their 70s. That's explosive power development for somebody in their 80s, right? Medicine ball. I love medicine balls. Core power, rotational power, right? This is great. Anybody can do this. Everybody that we coach will medicine ball throw. Medicine ball chest pass, medicine ball rotational pass, medicine ball overhead throws, medicine ball slams, whatever it is. Because we know in that little 5 to 10 minute block, we're going to get huge bang for our buck. Right? And kettlebell swings. And again, we can critique kettlebell swings all we want. I don't give a shit, truthfully. You know, bad kettlebell swings are way better than no kettlebell swings. Okay, and it doesn't, you know, some of the swings too squatty, whatever, great. You know, go on the forum and debate with your other friends who give a shit. I wouldn't be on that forum. But this is the explosive power exercise that we will use as long as we can possibly use it. Because it is so incredibly simple. If we can get somebody to jump, if we can get somebody to move in the frontal plane on single leg, if we can get somebody to explosively, even though explosive may be relative, explosively extend their hips, we are doing them a huge anti-aging service. And then from 20 minutes to 50, 30 minutes of strength training. That's all for us. 30-minute total body program. No body part workouts. 2 or 3 day total body, right? How many people remember Billy Crystal on Saturday Night Live? There's a few old people in here, right? It's not how you feel, it's how you look, right? Fernando would always say that. It is not how you feel, it's how you look. That's a lie, okay? I 100% believe it is how you feel. But yes, we would like to look better. But I'm going to take feel better over look better every single time. I want people who consistently are telling me, I feel better. Generally speaking, they will also look better. Particularly in the adult market, if you just get people working on extension, all of a sudden people will be like, oh, you're taller. And the reality is, no, I'm the same height I was before I started to have this curvature of the spine and forward head, but I've started to now combat some of that, right? Because think of it, in aging, curvature of the spine and forward head, that's natural aging. That's what we expect to happen. You know, we're going to get a Dowager's hump, and we're going to get a head that comes in the door a minute before you do, right? And then heavy versus challenging. Heavy is relative, not absolute, okay? Just for this, for the record, again, if you're insulted, good. If you're doing deadlifts with grandma, you're an idiot, okay? Like, I can't believe sometimes when I see the videos, and I've had people argue with me, oh, well, grandma, she wanted to enter a powerlifting meet. I'm like, oh, I've met, it's so funny. I meet them, those grandmas all the time like that. Like I'm at a party and they're like, I was thinking about powerlifting. And I was like, yeah, that would be ideal for you. That would be a perfect use of time and energy, is for you to, to train up your deadlift. Get a really good belt. Like you really need a thick 6-inch belt. There's some stuff you got to get. Bench shirt, probably be good for grandma, right? But we're laughing, right? But people are doing this every friggin' day in gyms. Where you see the videos. It's insanity, right? And then design a workout that can be done. A time-conscious workout. You got to know, okay, I got 30 minutes. What can I do in 30 minutes? Because, really, in our business, everything revolves around time. You've got, basically, in most situations, you have an hour. Some people will say, they do half-hour stuff. I know there are some people that do it, but generally speaking, you got to have an hour. So you got to know, what can I get done in an hour, right? How many sets can I get, including the warm-ups that I need? How many reps am I going to do? What's my rest time going to be? Am I going to use fillers? Like for us, we use core work as fillers because we always say, I want density. If I've got 30 minutes, I'd like to get as many sets done in 30 minutes as I can, given the constraints of the person that I'm dealing with. How much time, how much rest time do they need? Right? So for us, we're going to build pairs or triceps. We're going to do upper push exercises with knee dominant exercises, and then we'll probably do a core exercise after that. We're going to do an upper pull exercise with a hip dominant exercise, and we're going to do a core exercise after that. We're going to do somewhere between 6 and 9 exercises in a workout. If someone's particularly fit and they move at a better pace, they might get 9 exercises. I think the average person, like in our personal training settings, is probably going to get 6. In our adult programs, they almost get exclusively 9. And it's 3, 3, 3. Right? Knee dominant, we're always going to start. Okay, Mike Boyle doesn't like squats. Mike Boyle really likes squats. Mike Boyle doesn't like old people doing heavy back squats. Okay, there is a difference. Everybody that we train is going to learn to squat. When we go into the practical today, we will spend time on squatting. It is important that you're able to do that you are able to get down and up. It is not important that you can get down and up with 300 pounds on your back. I use the same old lame joke all the time, but people always say, this has been a frequent internet criticism. Oh, Mike Boyle doesn't want you to take a shit anymore. No one can bend their knees. And I'm like, no, Mike Boyle doesn't want you to take a shit with someone else on your back. Okay? That would be the differentiating factor. If you went in there and someone said, oh, well, you got to bring Mongo in with you, by the way, and then go, that's a whole different ballgame, right? But yeah, people should be able to bend their knees, right? Let's see. Oh, there we go. This is actually Allie Raisman, the gymnast, believe it or not. But, we started out really basic. And we're going to show you. We've got her feet are wedged because, believe it or not, for one of the best movers in the whole world, she wasn't a good squatter. She'd never done squats. Squatting wasn't natural for her. So we got heel wedges. We've got a band on her knees so we can get her to get a little more abduction. We're teaching what we call a press-out squat, which is going to get her to be able to keep her torso more upright. But we want to get a really good squat pattern out of everybody. Then we might progress to goblet squat, right? Then we might progress to unilateral. This is actually Kayla Harrison, who just won the UFC something or other. I forget what weight she is. But she had a bad knee at this time. But we're going to progress when we get to the point when you can handle bilateral squatting, goblet squatting, let's just say round number 25% of your body weight, we're probably going to unilateral stuff. Because now most of the rest of the things that are going on in life are going to be unilateral. I don't need you to progress to back squat. I don't need you to be able to do a bodyweight back squat. It doesn't have any bearing, right? And we could talk about the back squat thing forever, but it's not an important question. But we're going to think upper push, knee dominant. So basically what am I doing? I'm doing a set of squats, then I'm going over and I'm doing some sort of a set of presses. We're going to show you this in the practical too. This is my favorite press. This is called an AT Sports Flex. We have them out there for the practical. The reason I love it, for me, I've had shoulder surgery. That's the only press I can do that doesn't hurt. For some reason, being standing, having that load going back through my shoulder joint, probably pushing my humeral head into my glenoid more, I can press completely pain-free. If I was to try to bench press or dumbbell bench press or dumbbell incline, it's like, doesn't feel as good. What are we talking about the whole time, right? I want somebody that feels better, not worse. So I'm gonna ask somebody, the question I ask somebody all the time, does that hurt? You should ask people all the time, does that hurt? And then I wrote an article called Does It Hurt? And the big key to does it hurt is that does it hurt is a yes-no question. So if someone says, when you say, oh, did that hurt? And they're like, not really. That's yes, right? Or after I warm up, it's not bad. That's yes. Anything except no is yes. And anything except no means we generally change the exercise or the way we're going to perform the exercise. Because my goal is to find a pattern that you can, or an exercise in that pattern that you can do that's 0 on the pain scale. Which again, I don't think that should be complicated. But it's amazingly complicated in this field that you've got. I can't tell you the number of people who, you watch people bench pressing and walking around the whole time and rubbing their shoulders and doing all this stuff, and you're like, why? Let's find something that doesn't hurt. And that, as a for instance, doesn't hurt. But I mean, we can dumbbell bench, we can dumbbell incline, we can landmine press. We're gonna be careful with bars. As a matter of fact, we do not use barbells with our adults. Interestingly enough, I didn't know this until someone asked the question. And then I started thinking, and somebody said, well, you know, what barbell lifts do you do with your adults? And I kind of went, none. But only after thinking about it, it didn't dawn on me at all, right? We do not barbell bench press. We do dumbbell bench press. We do not barbell back or front squat. We do goblet squat, split squat, slide board lunges. We do not trap bar deadlift or barbell deadlift. We'll do kettlebell, same idea. Kettlebell sumo, till you can kettlebell sumo deadlift the heaviest kettlebell. Then we're gonna switch back over to unilateral versions. So 0 barbell work. No one, like if you come in and watch our adults, nobody basically touches a bar. You'll see the odd adults will trap bar deadlift maybe in a personal training situation. I always say I'm not a huge fan of doing that, but I will sometimes give the trainers a little bit of latitude because I like trap bar deadlift for healthy people, but you will not see. The only time I realized, the only place we use our barbells with our adults is to stick them in a landmine, which I thought was kind of interesting as we analyzed it, but it was something that I came to after the question was asked, not before, right? But we keep going back to this idea. Safe, smart. Again, if you get somebody who says, barbell bench press bothers my shoulders, and you give them 2 dumbbells, a lot of times they're like, oh, that doesn't hurt anymore. Right? And that's all I'm looking for all the time. Something that doesn't hurt anymore. Upper pull, the most joint friendly, and that's what we're thinking about. I guess if we're gonna classify these exercises, standing cable press, really joint friendly. X pull downs, really joint friendly. It allows, like your shoulder joint moves in what I would classify as a spiral diagonal way. If you allow that joint to move in that spiral diagonal pattern, it's generally not a painful joint. If you give it a stiff bar that doesn't move and then force it to move in a path that's dictated by the bar, that joint will start barking at you at some point. It's the way that it works, right? So for us, X pull downs. So if you watch Anna here, this was the greatest thing that came out of when they kind of invented the functional trainers. The great thing about functional trainer was that we were able to do each arm independently. And it's really funny because I'll watch people with the functional trainer and then they'll go and they'll put the lat pull down bar on it. And I look and think, how incredibly counterintuitive of you, right? That somebody invented this machine that was gonna allow you to not be dictated to by the fixed bar and then you stuck a fixed bar on it. Like, it's the most regressive form of thinking that I can find. Whereas here, we started realizing, well, actually, if I cross my arms and do this, it's super shoulder friendly. Like, if you haven't done it, just go and grab one of those functional trainers and just cross your hands and think, like we always tell everybody, thumbs down, thumbs up. Internal rotation, external rotation. And you'll have people all the time, oh, that doesn't hurt my shoulders. The other thing we don't do chin-ups with our adults, generally speaking. Because one of the things that you realize, there's just too much water under the bridge. Most adults, and I I write all these articles. I wrote another one called the airport screening test. If you want to know something about mobility, pay attention at the airport. Go in the screener when they say, they're like, lift your hands up over your head like this and watch what people do. You'll literally, people will be like, the average person cannot get their arms up over their head. There's too much water gone under the theoretical bridge for people to probably be doing chin-ups. There's too much load relative to body weight for people to be able to do chin-ups. You're going to end up with lots of people who they're like, oh, someone pulled something in my neck. I'm like, yeah. You know, you strained your levator scap because it was just under tension because you were shrugging that chin up, which you shouldn't have been doing. So same thing. So you look at it, some people are like, oh, we've only eliminated a couple of exercises. Basically just bench press, squats, deadlifts, and chin-ups. Those are the only ones we eliminated. And some people, exactly, like some people don't laugh, trust me. They don't think I'm very funny. But that's stuff that we don't do with our adult clients. But there's stuff, we do all that stuff, well, except the exception of back and front squats. But everything else we're doing with our athletes, but we're not doing it with our adult clients because what's the goal? Feel better, not worse. Safe, smart. That's what we've got to be thinking about the whole time, right? When we start thinking about hip dominant stuff, I hate double leg hinge work. Somebody explain to me when this happens. Not very often, right? And realistically speaking, people are like, you got to learn to hinge. I always kind of look at them and go, why? What are you ever really going to do? And then say, people are like, oh, well, you're going to have to lift up groceries. And I'm like, you ever see anybody like try to stiff leg deadlift groceries like that? Oh, like the groceries are like, I'm going to leave them 2 feet out in front of me, and then I'm just going to try to get out here like this and grab at them. No, right? No one does that. Right? It just, when you really think about it, like hinge has become a thing. Oh, you got to be able to hinge. You got to hinge. You got to hinge. Like, why do you got a double leg hinge? And then people, you got to be able to pick laundry up off the floor. I'm like, okay, so maybe you should be able to double leg hinge, like, but I'm still thinking that kettlebell sumo deadlift probably going to cover that pretty well for us, right? It's probably not a real necessity. Now you start thinking about single leg hinging. Now that's happening all the time. And then people will say, well, we don't single leg hinging. You know why we don't do that? I've really struggled with balance. I'm like, okay, another really dumb counterintuitive answer. Because how do old people get hurt? They fall, right? So the fact that they struggle with balance, okay, let's do an exercise where we struggle with balance. That's a good exercise. So we will do what we call a reaching one leg straight leg deadlift. We'll do tons of reaching one leg straight leg deadlifts, trying to get people to be able to hinge and reach with their opposite hand. Because what do I want? I want because I think, you know what balance is? Balance is hip and ankle being able to work. Balance, it's not like, I don't think it's as much like an inner ear failure that you're experiencing as it is a failure of your hips and a failure of your ankles to be able to stabilize you primarily in the frontal plane, but to some degree in the transverse plane. So I've got to be able to stabilize against rotation. I've got to be able to stabilize against sway. If I can do that stuff, if I can be good on single leg, like we're doing more single leg balance, just getting people, it's way harder than you think to just stand on one leg. But I would way rather do that than worry a lot about double leg hinging. We'll do more. We'll do a lot of split stance hinging. But we do almost zero conventional double leg, stick on the back kind of thing. I just don't bother with it. Doesn't make sense. And like I said, no one will ever RDL more weight than a kid or a laundry basket. Because big people, sports performance people are always arguing with me about, how essential the RDL is. And I'm just like, what is essential about that? I don't get it. Now if someone said to me, I've got to be able to get here, and I've got to be able to single leg deadlift here, yeah, that's essential. Because when I start thinking about moving, I'm going to move one leg at a time. I'm not going to forward bend 2 legs at a time, right? Like I said. And this is interesting. Like me is like 12 in this video, but she's playing ice hockey at Dartmouth right now. She's captain as a junior. Our kids, they hate that exercise because it's hard. And they would always think it's hard. It's really hard for me to balance. I'm like, exactly. That's why we are going to hammer that exercise, because it's hard and it's hard for you to balance. It's exactly what I want to have happen. Then I'm going to look, rather than double leg, I would way rather than hinging, I would much rather do bridge variations. The thing I like about bridge variations that you don't get, and we're going to talk about that in the practical too, when I'm teaching you to bridge, the essence of bridging is core control. Can I control lumbar extension while I create hip extension? When I'm forward hinging, I don't have to do that. When I'm here, double leg, single leg, whatever it is, I have to do that. I can link two really important skills together. I can link hip extension with core stability. And I can teach somebody about, hey, I need you to exhale hard. I need you to get that anterior core to be really solid. I need you to not extend through your lumbar spine, because that's the stuff that gives people back pain. So I'd way rather do stuff like this than conventional hinging patterns. And then, let's see. Oh. And then again, what are we going to progress to? Unilateral versions. Because the nice thing here, right? Safe and smart, if we think, I was talking to Pete about this today, about a book, like if you think about stuff, if you think about anatomy, that goes back to the Adam Grant thing. If you think again, as opposed to simply getting stuck on the fact that I'm telling you something that you don't want to hear, you will probably accept the conclusion, because you'll start looking at this and thinking, well, I really like the idea. Okay, well, I have to extend my hip while my other hip is in flexion. Okay? That's probably something that happens a lot. That's probably something that's essential to movement. Right? And then I love this. I just love this exercise. I think this is like the best bang for your buck lower body exercise that you can do, slide board lunge. Because the cool thing here is that if you look at this, I always say this is like horses and zebras, right? Because if you watch that exercise, I'll go back and let it do it again. This is Sam Apuzzo. Sam just won a gold medal at the World Championships in women's lacrosse. A client, that's a real person actually, that we train, that works out in our gym. But if we look at this, you would look at that and think squat, split squat, right? Single leg squat. But if you ask somebody where they feel it, they're probably all going to tell you they feel it in their glutes and in their hamstrings, because it's not a squat as much as it's a pull. This is basically a stationary version of a walking lunge, and a walking lunge is a pull. But the cool thing about this, I used to put these years ago, I called them hybrids, because they were kind of things that were in the middle. And I always think if you don't have a lot of time and you want to do lower body training, either do slide board lunges or do walking lunges, and you'll be able to check that kind of knee dominant and hip dominant box at the same time. And then technique, right? What we would call, so we said, the overlooked key. And we talk about this in the terms of the mirror and the window. If you look at your clients and think that your client is the mirror in which you see your training skills, your coaching skills, how do you feel? You want to be able to look at that person and think, I am good at this because they are good at this, or because they are getting better. You might start with, some clients are real motor morons, I get it. Not everybody's going to look perfect. But you should be thinking that this is very much reflective of you. And then we talk about the window idea. The window is if someone just came to your gym and they could just stick their nose against the window and watch you coach and watch your clients move. What would they think of you? So we want our coaches all the time to be thinking about this. Okay, if it's your group, what does your group look like? If you're looking at your group as a reflection of you as a coach, what does that look like? If someone was just outside and could only look through the window, what would they think of you? I want you to think about that stuff as you look at this. I love this quote. What people say, what people do, and what they say they do are entirely different things. The great thing about us is if you come, and there's a lot of you that have been, have visited, have been in our facility, you'll see it, and it won't be perfect. Sometimes some people come and they're shocked. People be like, oh, that person, that technique's not perfect. I'm like, I know, they've been here a week. What do you expect? Everybody that trains here isn't perfect. Sometimes I'll post videos of athletes trying a maximum type effort, whatever, chin up or bench press or whatever it is, and people will be posting comments, oh, you didn't fully extend his shoulder. I'm like, I know. It was a college kid trying to get 3 reps with the heaviest weight he's ever done before. It won't be perfect. But what you'll see is if you come into our facility, we're doing exactly what we say we do. When you come in, when you watch, you will see all of the workouts designed in this way. You will see people doing it. You will see we have 300 and some odd adult clients. We've got 300 and something athlete clients. We've got small group, we've got one-on-one, and it's all actually functioning in the way that it is functioning. This is where we go back sort of to the internet expert, the Instagram expert, in terms of sometimes you'll look and realize, wow, this isn't at all what they are proclaiming that they're doing, right? We keep coming back to this same central idea. Be safe, be smart. Generally speaking, if you're smart, you're safe. When you think about your clients, and this kind of goes along with the mirror and window idea, but when you realize that this person is entrusting you to take them along their fitness journey, and they're entrusting you with the idea that you're going to be safe and that you're going to be smart and that I'm not going to get hurt and that I'm not going to feel worse. That's what they're paying you for. So you've got to be thinking about that as you scroll through Instagram, as you do whatever it is you do from an educational standpoint. That, am I being smart? Am I being safe? Like people will always say, well, you're way too conservative. I'm like, oh, I'll take that one. I'll wear that criticism really well. Because I'm looking at this and thinking, whether, if it's an adult, this is somebody who's got to go to work. If they, whatever, they hurt their rotator cuff, they hurt their back, whatever it is, and they can't work, that's a problem. If it's a kid, I look at it and think, this is somebody's kid. How would I want somebody to take care of my kid who's coming to their sports performance facility? I'd like them to be making really good, safe, smart judgments about what my kid is going to do. I don't think that part of it's complicated at all. Last thing, just quickly, and then we're actually going to have time for question and answer, which I almost never do. Don't forget conditioning. Understand stress. So conditioning, this is the thing you have to think about, because again, we talked about the MAS test. We don't MAS test somebody for months. A lot of times we're just trying to get somebody, hey, get on the assault bike, pedal. Get your heart rate up a little bit. Get used to the bike, understand the bike, know what on and off, how it works, know how to set the seat, know what the RPMs look like, and not get on there. We don't want to shit kick somebody the first day that they're there. One, because again, they're probably not going to come back. And two, it's irresponsible. You're looking at some of these people and thinking, until the good thing, we try to get a lot of our clients in the MyZone monitors. We've got TVs up, but not enough of them wear them. But the one thing that you'll see is that if you get people to wear heart rate monitors, the workout's way more stressful than you think it is. The heart rates that you're eliciting are way higher than you think they are. And you may have people who are much more nervous than you think they are going to be. So what we've got to think about, understanding and controlling work to rest ratios, use the heart rate monitor, progress it, and eventually make it hard. But generally speaking, what I like to do with people is say, hey, get on the assault bike. There's a 10-20 protocol. I want you to push the 10-20 number. And I want you to ride for 10 seconds, and I want you to rest for 20. I don't want you to sprint for 10 seconds. I don't want you to go as hard as you can for 10 seconds. I want you to go, the good thing for us, and we're very adamant about this with our coaches, is that you have to ride the bike so you know the bike. So if someone looks, I might say to somebody, hey, all I want you to do is get up to 60 RPMs during the course of that 10-second interval, and then I don't care how much you pedal during the 20-second rest interval. I want it to be easy. We would look at it as a tempo 10-20, like nice and easy, kind of like this. Yeah, not too bad. But eventually progressing to something that's going to be hard, but we're giving them something palatable that they can do in the beginning. That is not, again, the last thing you want is people passing out, throwing up, laying on the floor, I mean, those are all phony badge of courage things that unfortunately we glorify in our field. And I've said, I'm not a CrossFit fan, but CrossFit didn't help us at all in that regard. But when you're talking about the average adult, that is not the experience they came for. They did not come to think, oh my God, you know, I feel like absolute shit. I don't know if I can get to my car. That's not the experience, right? So for us, and Kevin's going to talk about this, so I won't spend too much time on it. We talk about inverting the pyramid to build work capacity. So I want to go this way. I don't want to build a base at all. I'm literally building an inverted pyramid. I might say to somebody, we're going to do 2 30-second intervals. Then next week, we're going to do 3. And then next week, we're going to do 4. We're just going to build that work capacity up in really small, achievable chunks. So if I could conclude with one idea, it is this idea of sticking to the recipe. Training is a recipe, not a menu. And by that, I mean, in a menu, when you go to the restaurant, you get to pick off of the menu. I'll have one of these, I'll have one of these, maybe I'll have this for dessert, right? Training, recipe, boom. This, then this, then this, then this, then this. It's got to go exactly in that order. We want you to realize that training is a recipe. You want to get the best recipe that you can, and that everybody that you train should effectively be following the same recipe. We've been really successful with this, and our recipe really doesn't change. If you walked in, everybody foam rolls, everybody stretches, everybody does a dynamic warm-up. I don't care whether you're watching an athlete group, you could be watching the best athletes in the world at their sport, you could be watching an adult group with a bunch of 60 and 70-year-olds in it. The structure will appear to be pretty identical. You will then see power development work. You'll see some low-level plyos and some medicine balls, or some high-level plyos and some medicine balls. The things where you'll see a difference, athletes will run time sprints, adults won't run time sprints. Athletes will Olympic lift, adults will not Olympic lift. But beyond that, that's the 20 in the 80 or the 90 in the 10 in terms of in that recipe. That's really going to be different. You watch the structure of the workout, the flow of the workout's going to go the same way. It's not going to be very different. Roll, stretch, warm up, appropriate power work, joint. Look at those words, joint-friendly, intelligent. I want joint-friendly and intelligent strength training. And then I want to do some sort of work on conditioning with the idea that I'm going to get this person fitter than when they came to me. But also with the idea that I'm not going to make it some horrifying experience for them where they throw up and don't want to come back. You want people that want to come back. KISS principle, right? Keep it simple. We always talk about kiss and miss. Keep it simple, make it simple. It's not complicated. And this reminder, don't be a beer and ice cream coach. You're like, beer and ice cream coach. I like beer and I like ice cream. If you followed me around, you'd realize that I drink a lot of beer and I eat a lot of ice cream. If you asked me about nutrition, I would not say beer and ice cream, right? But in coaching, it's amazing how we get, I call these people the beer and ice cream coaches all the time, because you look and think, well, this guy's a bodybuilder and every client that he has bodybuilds. Or this guy's a power lifter and every client that he has power lifts. Like, don't be that person. Think about giving the person that safe, smart program that they came for. Closing advice. 21 indispensable qualities of a leader. Learn in your area of strength. Read 6 to 12 books a year on leadership or your field of specialization. Continuing to learn in an area where you are already an expert prevents you from becoming jaded and unteachable. Really important. Think again. Keep learning. Keep trying to figure out, like I always talk about, steal smart people stuff. Keep trying to figure out who the smart people are and keep listening to them. Keep reading what they're putting out so that you can stay at the level that those people are at.